Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town Board Work Session. It is April 28th, 2020. If you can all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
liberty
and justice for all.
And if you could all join me in a moment of silence, you can sit if you are standing, and join me for a moment of silence, remembering our neighbors, our first responders, our frontliners, and we especially tonight remember Supreme Court Justice Stephen Milgram, who lost his battle with COVID-19 earlier today. We pray for him and his family during this difficult time. Thank you. We are going to begin tonight. There's a resolution that we want to begin with that is not on the agenda. The board needed to consult our legal counsel on the matter. And so we are now I'm going to begin by proposing a resolution instructing the comptroller to pay the remaining legal fees to the Oxman Law Group totaling $14,642.70. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move to outdoor dining is the first item on the agenda tonight, and so we're going to be bringing in some of our department heads. I see that we have our town planner, John Tegeter, with us. We have our rec superintendent, Jim Moderano. Jimmy, a little early, but it's okay. You're on the next one. Appreciate you joining us.
Happy to be here.
I think we are waiting for Sergio and Bob Giordano of the YSBA. I see Bob's joining us. And there's Sergio. Oh, Presidente. Good evening.
And John Landy, is he there?
How's everybody?
Sergio, how are you?
Good, how about you?
Wait a minute. Is that Alice? Hey, Alice.
Yeah.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I miss you.
I miss seeing you guys, but I can't see you guys now.
You gotta turn the video on.
I don't think our internet's working again. So we have with us also John Landy, our building inspector, and my man Carmine Fursey, getting ready to start serving chicken scarp again, right, Carmine?
Getting ready. Another day or so.
Great. Bob Giordano. Bob, can you hear us? It just says connecting to audio. I want to make sure that you're good connecting. You can hear us there, Bob?
Yeah, we're good.
Right. And there's Deneen Fursey.
Hi.
The real boss. Perfect. Excellent. Well, listen, so for folks at home who don't know, we did start a task force called the Reboot Yorktown Task Force. We've been focused on coming up with some innovative and forward-thinking ways to make sure the town is setting the table so that when New York on Pause is lifted, we are doing all we can to support our local businesses. And so one of the things that came out of one of our first meetings was outdoor dining. And this is something I believe actually Rich Fawn, who's our planning board chairman, had proposed, and it was a great idea. And so why don't we have John Tegeter, you wanna talk about, you or Adam, you wanna talk about what we're talking, give us a briefing on this?
Happy to talk about it, unless Adam wants to introduce it, that's fine. No? Okay. Yeah, so basically in the reboot committee, the idea came up that in order to help and get things moving again, when we're able to get them moving again, an idea came up to get some the ability to streamline the permitting for outdoor dining for restaurants. Currently, the building inspector does 12 seats and under, and the planning board does 13 seats and over. Both include some plans and some, varying levels of review and so forth. But the idea was, how can we get it so that when the restaurants are ready to rock and roll, that they can get up and running and possibly get some outdoor dining, sometimes more than they already have, or sometimes if they haven't had it, get that in place right away. Make people feel more comfortable to come out and dine, but also to help them, since the belief is that the opening will be kind of a soft opening, and that they will only be allowed maybe 50% of their interior occupancy that's currently allowed under their permits now. So
Yeah, why don't we hear from Carmine and Deneen? What could you're obviously literally on the front lines on an issue like this. Can you maybe provide some insight about how this would help some of your restaurant, but other restaurants in the town of Yorktown?
Sure. So, if we can only seat 50% of the people in the restaurant, number one, because it's the law, number two, to make people more comfortable. Having outside seating is going to help us employ more of our staff and, try and get our sales up. I mean, obviously they're not going to be what they would have been, but, you could space people out. You'd have more room to do that. Plus, people are going to feel a lot more comfortable sitting outside than inside, where it's kind of, could be a little bit, it could seem a little close, even if we're measuring out 6 feet between tables. People are going to be leery. And, in my opinion, people like sitting outdoors, normally. But now, forget it. That's going to be like the biggest request. So
right.
I think it's just a sense of security for people. And if that gets people out, then, the more seats you can get for people outside in every restaurant, the better.
Great.
I agree with you. I'm not sure many restaurants could survive on just seating 50% of its capacity.
No,
You
can't.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, this will also include if they want to put up a tent to protect the area, so they could even put sidewalls up, put a little heating in there if they need to. This will include all of that, correct?
Yes, that's something that we talked about and Adam looked into, and that's included in the draft.
And one of the key components of this is that it's there's an expedited process
Yes.
where a restaurant can actually get through the process in a fairly quick manner. So this way they could increase the capacity of their seating, just like Alice said. And that's really critical. So, that has to be, one of the components. And I think you guys have addressed that. I don't know who wants to speak about, I don't want to overspeak or step on anybody's toes. So if anybody could address that issue and how that's going to be resolved, that would be fantastic.
Matt, do you want to take that?
Address that, Matt?
Yeah, sure. So we've done a lot of work on this with the task force, and so as Sergio had already said, this is going to be a streamlined process. This is something that we think is going to be much quicker. Usually, with all due respect to the planning board, and we appreciate all their hard work, this is about John, correct me if I'm wrong, a roughly 6-week process usually to get outdoor seating approved by the planning board. If not 8-week process.
Yeah, well, I mean, realizing that they meet every 2 weeks, so you have to get on an agenda, and then it will take a couple of meetings. Typically, it's not usually a 1-meeting thing. So yeah, I would say 6 to 8 weeks.
Correct. So we're going to reduce.
And that's on the inside. There's outside times where it goes on for a little longer.
So that gets dramatically reduced because we're going to be able to streamline the process right through the building department and our building inspector. And on top of that, we're actually going to be suspending fees associated with the permitting as well, because at this point in time, we want to do all we can to support our small businesses and our Main Street businesses, and support our restaurants and eateries, and so this is about setting the table for the town of Yorktown and supporting the business community and giving them a hand up, and so we're going to be, and again, Adam can speak to the technical aspect of this, but this is a temporary situation that would expire at the end of the year, correct, Adam?
Yeah, all permits, both for the operation and any temporary structures that the building department allows to be erected in conjunction with this operation, would expire at the end of 2020, as would the building inspector's authority to issue the permits.
Correct. And then so it would be back to the normal process unless the board feels that a continuation of this policy needs to continue. And I think it's a bold step. It's something that, again, Yorktown has led from the front from day one during this pandemic. And now as we look towards the future and we look towards releasing the New York on pause orders, we will once again be leading from the front to provide immediate assistance, but also bold initiatives to get our economy working again, which I think is going to be everyone's focus in a few weeks, hopefully.
Can I ask John Landy a question?
Sure.
Can I say something? If somebody, like a small pizza place or something, can they put out a 2 umbrella and it's 4, 5, 6 year like that? Do they need to go through this permitting and the building and like that?
Yeah, right now the law requires them to go to the building department up to, I believe, what would you say, John? It was 12 seats or 13 seats? So
12.
even 12. So they would have to
12.
Yeah, so they would have to go to the building department anyway. And actually, I was with John today. We were over in Shrub Oak. We were over at a place. We were over at Barbecues. We went to Romano's Pizza, and we were talking this up, and we were explaining what we were doing because we met with the owners over there, and they were very excited. They thought it was a great idea, as obviously did the task force and the Fursies, who've been a champion of this as well. And I think it's going to be well received. And again, it's about what we can do on the local level. We don't control a lot of things, but it's making sure that the things we can control, we're putting on the table, and we're giving that hand up to our local businesses. Is
Bob, John Landy around? Is
Yes,
John Landy on with us?
Yes, he is.
I am.
John, so your department can handle this, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will personally go out and take a look at the sites.
Great. I am thrilled with this.
I want to make sure that we reiterate the point that this isn't a one size fits all. So some restaurants may not be set up in such a way that this might work for them, but this is kind of like we're trying to facilitate something for the most amount of people possible, the most amount of restaurants possible. Which brings me to, I just have 2 questions. One is for John, and then one is to address the possibility that the task force spoke about to expand this not only for restaurants, but for any business that can set up shop in front of their storefront, so this way, part of the idea with the restaurants is to try to increase their seating capacity in a way that's safe and that doesn't violate any laws coming from the state. So that's why the outdoor seating would be an add-on to, let's say, if they were reduced to 50% capacity or 25% capacity. The other side is if we could include just any business. Now, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Every business, it may not apply to some businesses, and that's unfortunate. Maybe we could brainstorm with the task force to get something to fit their needs. But by including all other businesses in Yorktown, in the Heights area and the 5 hamlets, we could then further facilitate the perception and need for safety, right? And people that may not be apt to come out and go into a store even after the bans are lifted may be more apt to come in if they know that they could do their shopping from outside. If a business could set up a table or something like that, or some structure or whatever, the same rules would apply. Of course, it would have to be within their boundaries.
I'm not sure how this would work. I'm just not sure how it would work.
It'd be sort of like a summer-long sidewalk sale.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we're still vetting it. I thought it was a good idea from the task force that we just need to get more clarity on from the mechanics, how it would actually work. I know this is actually, Sergio talked about it. Bob Giordano's on the phone, here with us from the YSBA. Bob talked about this for some of our service-oriented businesses. It's very interesting. I think that if we're going to continue to be creative, it's something that we may, I think we need to look at the mechanics behind it. I think right now, let's get the restaurants and this item for the restaurants off the plate, and then we can.
You know why I'm questioning it? There are restaurants in shopping centers, and if you have that will need space. And if you have the whole shopping center out there, I'm not sure everyone's going to have the appropriate amount of space.
I kind of agree with Alice on that. The one thing that I think about is the public safety end of it, where, if you do have to get, God forbid, a fire truck or something that of that nature in there, that sidewalks, et cetera, are going to be cluttered. So we're going to have to really vet that. But for right now, I think if we get the restaurants to have a little outside seating and a space,
I agree.
I think it would be a wonderful thing.
Well, that's why Matt and I have been talking about this, and although they are coming through the building department for easeability and quick to get it done quickly, I will be going out to the site, looking at the site, explaining to the owner what they may need to protect whoever is in the tents seating, some type of barriers or whatever, and also to look at where the placement of the tent or seating may be. So, like Tom said, for fire trucks or ambulances or any type of emergency services can get into the area safely. So that is what we would be looking at, and I would be discussing with the business owner, restaurant owner, to make sure that could be done.
And that's why I disagree with Tom and Alice, is because that's what you're there for, right? It's going through the building department. Obviously, you're not going to just go and rubber stamp things. You're going to look at the safety aspect and see if it's possible, if it's not possible. So, I mean, that is why the building inspector is involved in this whole thing, of course. So, I'm just trying to get as many businesses, to have as many options as they possibly can, because they're all devastated.
Well,
you know what,
we're not here to say, no, we're here to say, how can we make it work?
Correct.
Where can we make it work?
And Sergio, there may not be need for a whole new set of rules for just regular businesses like dry cleaners and stuff like that. They can put. Are they not permitted to put a table outside? I think we're talking something more than a table. We're talking for a restaurant. We're talking multiple tables and multiple chairs for a regular place like my dry cleaners. They could just have a little table out there, and you put your little ticket on when you walk up, and they go and get it.
Yeah, I think right now we're focused on. I just want to bring us back in. I think it's something that we're definitely going to explore. Adam, I know we're going to have a deeper conversation about what other businesses we can support in the same way. Right now, like I said, we're doing everything we can to support the small business community, our Main Street businesses. The outdoor dining permits, this is a ground ball that everyone seems to agree on. And then what the next step is from there, whether it's, for more retail outdoors or service oriented businesses, those are things that we're continuing to discuss and explore. But I think right now the outdoor dining permits, we want, it sounds like there's consensus on collectively.
Absolutely.
And I do want to add one caveat into there, not to throw ice water onto it, and I'm not trying to, but I know in a couple of places that I've worked, we've had the tables jammed on the patio so tight that we have to make sure that we not only apply the new rules to the people coming to us, but take a look back at someone who has already been permitted for a patio and make sure that the social distancing and
well, that's the key, Councilman, is what we have to remember is no matter what we decide here, it all has to fall in line with what the governor is going to put forward as part of the lifting of New York on pause. And so I think what we're trying to do is make sure every tool in the tool belt, the tool shed, the garage, anything we can possibly use is on the table. And obviously, no matter what that is, it has to adhere to whatever social distancing guidelines that we're going to have to continue to meet. And I'm sure that the governor and the Department of Health and the SLA, I spoke with the SLA because I was curious if we allowed outdoor dining, what would that do to a liquor license? They would have to, obviously, and I know that our town clerk has been involved in this as well, and she's with us as well. But the applicant would have to go to the SLA and get an amendment to their application to be able to serve either more or further outside than what their SLA license allows them to do. So there's going to be other things. It's not a perfect solution, but from the town's perspective, we're doing what we can to support our local restaurants to help get them off their feet and back in the game. And I think that from listening to folks like the Fursies, folks from YSBA and the Chamber, this is something that's going to definitely help some of those local restaurants get back to business in a safe way and restore confidence back in our local economy. It's, again, one small thing. Totally understand that. And we have to be pragmatic about it, but it's one step forward. And we'll
why don't you make the proposals, Matt?
Can I just?
I got one other add on. I don't mean to be a pain, but what's going to end up happening is if you're going to have to go to the SLA, depending on where the outdoor seating is going to be for any one particular restaurant, you may or may not need authorization or a letter from the supervisor because it may be on town property. At which point you would get a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured to insulate the town. But what would end up happening with us in the chambers, anytime that we wanted to do something with the SLA and alcohol, we would have to come in front of the committee, in front of you guys, in front of the town board, and we would have to request authorization at a work session. Then it would have to be voted on at a regular meeting. Then it would authorize the supervisor to write the letter that would allow or facilitate the SLA to issue the permit. Now, you don't have this issue if you're on private property. You have to get that letter from the landlord. So if we could make that part of this proposal, so this way we don't get into this thing where everybody's got to come in front of the board just to get a letter from the town, so this way they could actually apply for the SLA permit. If we could,
I think Matt already anticipated that, Sergio.
What's that?
With getting a copy of the order that he's going to sign.
I'm sorry, I missed
Yeah, no. So let's, Sergio, it's a great point. So we'll just hold on to that for 2 seconds. So I think let's just take this conversation to the next level. So I think it's got to be twofold. I think we have a legislative solution, but understanding that legislative solutions take time because there's a legislative process that we're going to have to follow to amend the code. I think we need to follow that process. But that timeline doesn't match the timeline that we could be looking at for our small businesses to reopen. So therefore, in addition to the legislative solution, very similar to what we've done with our littering law, how we enhanced the littering law through an emergency order, and we also are putting it through the legislative process. I think we should do the same here, and we would issue an emergency order since we still are under a state of emergency. This way, it matches the timeline, hopefully, that we can begin to see some relief from the New York on pause order, and it'll give us that mechanism. And then secondly, also put it through the legislative process so that we can legislatively amend the code as well.
Correct.
I just have one question. Sergio, did you say you agreed or disagreed with Alice and I didn't catch that. It blocked out.
With regard to the additional businesses and not just restaurants, I would prefer that we add additional businesses while we're here. But, I understand that it's kind of like spur of the moment. And you guys got to discuss it.
Right now, I think
that's the only place I disagreed with.
Can I chime in here?
Yes, Bob, please.
Okay. So we need a broad and inclusive program here. And what sparked this was just talking about the restaurants, but we used some examples of, I think Wishes was one of them. If it would help their business to be able to put some of their products and merchandise out on in front of the store, or Genesis Jewelers for that matter, or Pure Physique, maybe he's not going to get his members back. Maybe they're going to be fearful to go inside the gym. Maybe he takes 2 spaces in the rear of his facility and put some outdoor gym equipment. These are things that are going to remove some of the fear that people, as Matt said earlier, you got half the people in this town are dying to get out in about, and there's another half, I believe, that are reluctant or will be reluctant to. So what we're trying to do here is provide them with a comfortable, safe setting. And I think many small businesses, merchants and retailers in town would love to not have to go through an onerous process and take months to be able to demonstrate or provide some of their services or merchandise, at least for people to browse and look at out the front of their shops.
So I think it becomes a legal question.
Can I ask John a question? John, aren't some people allowed to put a table outside of their business? I've seen this in the past.
Yes. Yeah, you're allowed.
Okay.
So back to the SLA rulings and laws. You know, I think you could waive the fee for the town getting a permit to have seating out there and have it inspected by the building department. I think this is all great things. There is rules by the SLA, and unless they change, they waived the rule that we could serve liquor to go, which was great, and they did that pretty quickly. So maybe there's something that they're working on as well, or they would listen to our idea and think it's a great idea and waive that, because you have to put fencing up. You have to have at least a 3 or 4, I think it's a 4-foot fence around any perimeter that liquor is being served in. So there are certain rules that you have to follow. You guys can't just waive the SLA laws.
Absolutely.
So the restaurant would have to have something in place where they're going to fence it in and have somewhat of a drawing. I believe when we submit our outdoor seating, we have to have a little drawing, and it shows how many seats or tables we're going to have out there.
Yeah, that's still going to be required. That's still going to be required for the town right now. As for the SLA, I spoke with some former colleagues of mine who were pretty high up in the SLA ranks, we'll say, and they haven't started having these conversations. I don't think that they were necessarily closed to them, but to your point, Carmine, they haven't started thinking, I think, this far ahead. But again, we can begin that conversation here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because on the sidewalks, if people have restaurants or they're serving alcohol, that's going to be a little difficult for them to fence in that area.
Right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think the town just wants to make sure we're doing our part in easing any regulation that we can from a permitting or a approval process. Right. What happens beyond that is frankly out of our control.
Right.
Because the County of Yorktown doesn't SLA. I know when the lights get turned off, people think I run the utility companies, but I don't. But same with the SLA. I mean, so I think that we have to just do what we can. We have to do our part as a local government, and I think this achieves that. As for what's beyond restaurants, it seems like the law is pretty loose. Is my initial take. I think we still need to do some additional research. I think that we can start here. I think it's a very strong starting point. It sends a very strong message, and then we can expand it as we see fit to ensure other small businesses enjoy the same opportunity as our restaurants and eateries and cafes, and we're going to do everything we can across the board to give everyone a helping hand. Don't get me wrong. We'll find creative ways to do it, but this is the first step in that direction.
You know, I think every business that Sergio mentioned, with the exception of the gym, are permitted to put a table outside and have their wares displayed outside.
Right, and the other
we could possibly add, on a limited basis, different types of businesses. It doesn't have to be everybody, because everybody's not going to partake in it anyway. So Matt, I think you're on point with that. I just wanted to start the conversation, bring it up. It was something that was discussed in the task force with an additional idea. one last thing is, what does the expedited permit price? This is for our building inspector, John. What does the expedited process look like? I mean, is there, a week, 2 weeks, a month?
All right. I don't know if John's still on, but hard to put a number on it because we haven't implemented it. We haven't had our first test run. I think but I think needless to say, it's going to be a heck of a lot faster to get a building inspection, a building department approval, rather than, as John Tegeter had pointed out, every other week schedule of our planning board to go through their process. So you're still looking at cutting it down to a third, if not a half the time, if not more, depending on how quickly our building department can respond to the applications. The other thing I keep forgetting to mention that I wanted to throw out there as well, by amending the law, we're also going to be allowing for music. Apparently, according to the law, it's kind of like our smoking law. It's kind of like Footloose. No music apparently is allowed outside in the town for restaurants. So we're going to be amending that, and I think that's an important proposal as well, so that music would be allowed during specific hours, not until in the middle of the morning. This isn't going to be a rock concert in Yorktown for the whole summer, even though I wish it would be. But we will have responsible hours associated with the music, so that would be another enhancement to the current code.
Yeah, and that's one, John Landy, you have to pay particular attention to if the restaurant is near any residents, near their homes.
Yeah, I think that right now the way that Adam, I think that right now the way it's written is 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Music would be allowed. Is that correct? If I remember correctly.
That's correct.
So if we need to amend that, we can. But at least for the time being, it would allow outdoor music from 12 to 10 for these establishments.
So can the chamber then, once it's passed, begin to advise our local businesses to start their application process ahead of the opening of, I'm assuming this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Sergio, that's why I also recommended that we do both. We do the emergency order so that you can start having, our businesses apply, as well as a legislative the legislative process, because the legislative process timeline won't match up.
Sergio, if you would send a copy of the emergency order that Matt signs out to your the owners of your restaurants, that would be great, and they can start to do it now. That way, John won't be taken off guard when 10 of them come in at one time.
Right. So we're going to craft the emergency order to reflect the amendments in to the code that's been that I know that our legal team's been working on in conjunction with John Tegeter and John Landy. And I think that's my feeling is that's the correct way to go. Members of the board, any objection?
Absolutely not. I think it's a great idea. It's a laudable task to have these restaurants start to open up and start to do some business, with the social distancing, et cetera. The Percy's have a wonderful place out back there. I've sat back there with myself and past supervisor Michael Grace and a couple others. And I don't remember if we had any drinks, so we won't go there.
I don't think so.
I don't think we did. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. And one of my main concerns is, like, if we do decide to do that, it's just, and John Tegeter and I have had this discussion in the past, just like the Trailside Cafe, that actually needs some ballards or something out front there, so that some type of barrier, so that if people are sitting there and a car does ram, that they're protected.
No doubt about it.
That's scary outside of their place.
It is, especially the way some people drive.
Yep.
We'll have our building department take a look at it, and that's something that we're going to rely on them to properly enforce.
You want to tell us what we're voting on, Matt?
So we have so I think we would do this. I would make a motion. It's going to be a motion to refer out the amendments to section 300-80 And this would add a
Outdoor.
it would be a C. Well, it would amend section 300-80 in the code. So we can, I'll entertain a motion to refer the amendments to the necessary agencies.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And secondly, I would also entertain a motion instructing the supervisor to sign an emergency order reflecting the proposed amendments to section 300-80.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Did I hear second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No opposed? Great. So we will prepare the emergency order so we can begin implementing immediately. And the town clerk's office will refer the amendments to the necessary agencies. Excellent. Good work,
Correct.
everybody. Thank you very much.
Great.
All right,
Great
thanks,
job.
guys. Great job, and I appreciate everything you're doing for the town.
Let's get
thank
outside
you.
dining soon.
Chamber.
That's it.
Thanks, Tom.
Now we
Thanks,
just need
folks.
some good weather. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Tom and
Thank
Janine.
you.
Great work on the, on this too. So thank you so much for getting
Yeah,
involved.
thank you to the Percy's. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda because we're running a little behind already. The athletic field lights legislation. We've got our Parks and Rec Superintendent, Jim Martirano. We have Commissioner Matt Talbert of the Parks and Rec Commission. Still with us is John Tegeter and, of course, Adam Rodriguez. Jim, Matt, and John Tegeter, do you want to provide an update on this?
Yeah, I'll go first really quick. So about early January, you had me come in. You asked me to go over a couple things in the town code that I thought could be updated. You've already handled the smoking update. Thank you for that. And the other thing I brought up was the lighting. In chapter 200, subsection 6, I just had one small issue with that section, which read sports fields may be lit, provided the lights are only on when the field is in use and the light fixtures are fully shielded and properly aimed at the intended field of play. We have updated our lights at Granite Knolls. We're using LED lights, and they're a copyrighted light, a patented light called the Game Changers that specifically light our fields without a fully shield needed. So I just wanted to change that one line, really those two words. And John had a good idea on how we could change it.
John? John, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Nope. Okay.
So it says that just as Jim just said, it says that the light fixtures are fully shielded, and obviously a sports field is a little bit of a unique animal. And understanding, I met with Jim a couple of times along with Matt, and it's clear that, this should be modified somewhat. And my thought was that we should still try to shield these lights from people's vision, and in particular the light source from your eye. And we should do that to the greatest extent practicable. And that is the term that I would like to see inserted in there. In this way, the planning board will be able to do as good a job as can be expected, but still you're not going to be able to set up a lighting plan for a field as you would expect for a parking lot or a commercial installation. So, and I think that's where we should go with that.
The phrase we're just going to add is to the greatest extent possible. That's really the only amendment we're making.
Right. Greatest extent practicable.
Practicable. Excuse me. Thank you.
And that's exactly what we did at Granite Knolls.
To the greatest extent practicable. Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, Matt and Jim and John. Only because Legacy Field, I don't believe, has those type of lights, so they have to be shielded.
No,
so
they're incandescent lights, and they would need shielding.
Right. So we can't remove that 100% out of the law per se. So I think that fits well. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, no, I think it works.
Okay.
So do you
So
want to
then-
make a proposal, Matt?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to refer the amendments out to necessary agencies.
So
Do I have a
moved.
Motion.
Second? All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed? Great. So we'll remove this forward and the town clerk's office will refer it to the necessary agencies. Thank you all for your help in getting this moving forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. And Matt, do you want to keep me on for the MOU?
Yeah, you can stick around for MOU.
Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Talbert, thank you.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too. Enjoy.
Take care, Matt.
All right. Next, we have a presentation. This is we're going to bring on Phil DeFina. Phil and his team of safety management systems. One of the things that we've discussed, Councilwoman Roker, during the budget at the end last year when I was sitting in, you and I had talked about fleet management. And and one of the things that I also talked about a lot was asset management. And Phil DeFina and his crew have hello? Phil?
Yeah, could you hear me?
Yep, I got you, Phil. How you doing?
Good. I'm on. I have my phone. I was waiting on hold. I have my two other compadres, Christian Ducker and Jason Adam, on also.
I see Jason. I don't see Christian.
Christian is 917-602. That's our number.
I'm on, Phil. I'm on. Yeah.
Okay.
My image is that. So.
Gotcha. Perfect. Well, we really appreciate everyone joining us. And so this is to discuss a fleet and asset management system. And why don't you, if you could present to the board what I know that we had a conversation along with Councilman Lacker. So why don't you present? I think it's at this point wanted to bring it to the full board so you can educate them on the services that you could provide.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor. My name is Phil DeFina. I'm a longtime Yorktown resident, and our company's name is Safety Management Systems. We're a provider of safety management technology and consulting services, and also have developed software solutions called SMS 360 and Fleet 360. These are software tools which allow companies, municipalities of any size, implement and manage their EHS, fleet safety, DOT, and OSHA compliance. So with me tonight, I have Christian Ducker, who's the president of SMS, and Jason Adam, who is our fleet services director. And after several conversations that we had, several meetings, we've come up with a proposal that we believe will help Yorktown by determining gaps and opportunities in your current fleet management and maintenance program. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason. He was put this together. And Jason, would you like to explain the proposal in detail?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Phil. Good evening, Councilman, Councilwomen. My name is Jason Adam with SMS 360, Fleet Service Division. Basically, to provide a brief overview, as Phil explained, Supervisor Slater's reached out to us with also some concerns regarding the status and maybe the health of the city, Yorktown Heights Fleet Maintenance and Management Program. So I would like to briefly cover the service review bid that was placed by SMS 360 and what that entails. The review will be performed by myself. Will include a comprehensive review and analysis within 4 key areas of the Yorktown Fleet Division. Those areas are going to be vehicle maintenance. Provided you guys with a slide of kind of some high-level overviews, but to provide a little bit more, so here I'm looking at the scope of the repairs being performed and the quality of those repairs. Some of the examples of perhaps call-outs would be, are we doing $15,000 repairs on a vehicle that has a net book value of $5,000? If so, is there a justifiable business reason for that? There can be, but those would be things I would be looking at. Are the recommended OEM servicing procedures being followed? Since 2002, the trucks have gone from 1 to 2 computers to as many as 8 and 9 these days. Does the shop have the necessary tooling and software to communicate with technological advancements? Very expensive and perceivably complicated exhaust filtration systems have been added to the vehicles over the last couple of years. Has the PM program been revisited to make sure that and compensated to basically adopt the OEM recommendations for those filtration systems? And are they being done on the PM services? Any of those that are not being followed definitely have negative financial effects that go along with that. Another area would be staffing and culture. As we all know, a happy employee is a productive employee. So I also take into account the culture of the shop and employee morale. Any quick win call outs that can be instituted for large culture gains would be definitely implemented, or not implemented, but suggested. I think we also look at OSHA requirements as well. I think today I had a Stanford technician, a rookie technician. He was operating a torch 2 feet from a full can of combustible brake clean. So I had to just tap him on the shoulder and just say, "Hey, how about we think about what we're doing right here, and let's prevent some negative effects." But so those are just some of the things that I always keep an open eye when I walk through the shops. Organization responsibilities being performed, are those streamlined? Is the tooling in the location where the work is being performed? Some common sense type items that throughout the years kind of maybe loses touch in the shops. Also going to look at some systems and support, and basically an analysis of the existing software to ensure it's touching all the needs of the Yorktown fleet, as well as the standard fleet maintenance reporting needs. From some previous discussions, it sounds like my time here may be a little limited. But that's okay. We will keep an open eye and definitely check into whatever there is for reporting measures currently in place. Also, we'll be looking at the assets. When I say asset inventory, that means the fleet vehicles, but also there's parts inventory that each shop carries usually. So I'll take a look at the parts carry. That's some feedback. Some simple things that
Jason, excuse me.
That I like to look at.
Hold on 1 second. If everyone besides Jason, you could just make sure you're muted so there's no back feed, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Continue.
Yep. So regarding the assets and inventory, so some of the things I will look at will be parts carrying cost of that inventory. Simple things such as inventory stock levels over the years that have been inflated, maybe to compensate for poor vendor performance or supply chain, or even just lack of process and adherence to process. I was able to trim $40,000 from an Indianapolis-based shop in 1 month just by looking at their mins and maxes of their values and taking an assessment of their fleet supply chain of those parts getting to the shop. And we did so without impacting the uptime of the equipment, that's a win for all parties involved, operations as well. Let's see. Also, I wanted to keep this brief. I mean, there's a lot of things that I will be looking at over the scope of this project. Tire programs, tires and fuel, those are, the biggest expenses usually for fleets. Our idle shutdown timers being implemented. Those are huge fuel cost savings. Our part cycle counts being performed, and what are the frequency of those inventory parts adjustments? Is there a tiered structure in place regarding financial decisions? So does the local shop level have this amount to spend and then it has to go to this person? So just good business practices that should be implemented, and those will be the things that I'll be looking for and reviewing if we go proceed with the contract. But at the end of all of this, we will compile all of our findings into a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, along with providing not just, here's what we found, but along with that comes the industry recommendations to adopt and implement within processes to tackle those negative findings. So that is essentially the basis of the review proposal. Hopefully I've touched on some things that you guys were looking for, and if I've not, please let me know. If you have any questions, also let me know.
Jason, I really appreciate the presentation, and I apologize that it has to be so brief. I'm really interested to hear Councilman Diana. Really curious to hear what your thoughts and questions might be on the.
as we all know, these newer vehicles that are out there have such a drastic new amount of emission systems. Being very familiar with fleets and fleet managements, having that type of vehicles myself, the cost is ridiculous at best.
It is.
And if we can keep a handle on that, that would be the best way to do it. It's hard to say at what point, because these new vehicles now basically have to go back to the dealer. There's so many electronics, and I believe it was you that said that, you know, there was 2 computers. Now there's 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever they're putting on them now to get the same job done for the emissions and so on and so forth, that it becomes an arduous task for even the dealerships to handle it, where they have fleets that have downtime of and vehicles that have downtimes from fleets of months. It's I don't think that you know, the town as a shop would have probably, let's say, the recycling facility for the diesel particulate and so on and so forth, where that probably would have to go to a Freightliner or a Mack or whatever dealer. So yeah, that in onto itself could be a real money saver. I think you'll probably find as you go through our shops that you'll see that our mechanics are pretty well staffed with the equipment and the parts that they need to keep the stuff running, especially the emergency stuff that has to go out and plow, you know, for 48 hours at a clip. They keep, you know, a good percentage of the trucks up unless they, God forbid, get wrecked. But it's interesting the amount of other things that you have to put into a fleet management system now that you didn't have to do in years gone by because of all these Department of Energy updates and unfunded mandates, so to speak, that they make towns, villages, and fleet owners have. But you know, it's something that we need. It's something that I think would be an asset for the town to move forward in. I want to look a little bit more closely at it, but yeah, let's check it out.
I have a question.
Councilwoman Roker, yes.
Jason, do you realize we have 3 separate departments that perform our vehicle maintenance?
Yes, I was informed that there are 3 locations, potentially 4, I heard. But where, you know, highway department may have their own vehicles they work on, police and maybe fire may share one. Yes, I'm aware that there are several locations. That was also in the bid. And that is part of that. I would be visiting all of those locations as well.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, when you're done, can I say something?
Yes, Councilman.
I'm done.
Okay, let me tell you. First of all, are we going to include all the police and highway and all the vehicles we have to run the town? Is this everything included? And let me tell you, there is something else. Do you have any kind of plan that you can see what vehicle is going where and doing what, the scheduling, you know, moving around, emergency, that include the police, the highway? They can keep their vehicle where they are. They have a record of maintenance all together. And we have 2 antennas in the town now. You can use electronically monitoring what is happening in the vehicle, where it is, and what is the condition of right away. Do you want to use this our antenna to also incorporate it in your program?
I think that's a GPS. Are you talking about GPS tracking, Councilman? So you know where all the vehicles are. And
the antenna now, you know, and we are using for the water department. We can use the same one. That's why initially it was purchased and installed, you know, those antenna. And I think, you know, if you do everything combined together will be really good. You know, I mean, we can manage, because many of the equipment, many of the vehicles, we don't even know when the filter was changed, all that. This comes right away on a computer and you fix it before you fix. It's really great. Like you maintain the aircraft, all the other essential ambulance. How they manage it, we can do like this. Really, very good idea.
Vishnu has a point there, but our mechanics do keep copious notes of when they do maintain these vehicles and how they maintain them. They're very meticulous on that. It's like the old saying years ago: garbage in, garbage out. As long as you put the numbers in your program, it's going to spit out that truck number 14 needs, a diesel particulate filter regen or something of that nature. And that will pop out on your daily reports or however they are manifested. In as far as GPS tracking, we do have that capability at this point. It just has to be implemented.
Well, that's very important because this way, before the truck breaks down, listen, hey, take it out. Even a month before the season changes and like that, and preventing maintenance, and it's really good. And I understand it's very important things to know that they have all kind of communications devices included now, computerized. So it is very difficult for us to have those kind of diagnostic tool for every vehicle. The truck is different, the police car is different, and so if everything is included, this is really nice. We should explore how we can save the money and improve our performance.
One of the reasons I brought this up during the budget was because this could provide us with a guidepost in terms of actually for the supervisor when he creates his budget, understanding which cars should be removed and how many new ones we need for the fleet. I think this is something that is long overdue.
Alex, you're 100% right. Correct on that.
Yeah, Councilman, I think you nailed it. I mean, that's one of the things that I've been talking about since we met during that budget cycle. Is and to your point, there's three. Really, our fleets are siloed, right? They're siloed away from each other, and so when we're trying to make financial decisions, we're not really seeing a holistic picture. We're seeing a picture based on each individual silo, and I think that really cripples our decision-making process to a point. And then on top of that, the other thing that I thought was just very interesting that I think that Jason I wish he had more time to go into more deeply is looking at our purchasing and making sure that we are making I think there's going to be some savings there potentially.
I agree.
Behavior to make sure. Jason, can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I know we talked a little bit about it briefly on another call. So as Vishnu kind of pointed out, there's multiple OEMs across the fleet, and that brings in efficiencies of its own within the shop with training, the different softwares required with all of these. So there's gains to be had when you consolidate the OEMs and go to one like a Mack or Volvo or whatever that decision is. There's definitely gains to be had to go with that, but to stay exclusively with one OEM is not also recommended either. Coming from the retail environment, I watched business owners play the dealerships against each other, and it's also recommended, good practice, to go get a bid from another vendor and then take that back to your original vendor and say, hey, I'm talking to these guys for 10 trucks over here right now. What are you going to do for me? You know what I mean? So you have a little bit of leverage power, but definitely, like as Vishnu said, if you guys have multiples across there, probably look to consolidate those down to one or just a couple. And some OEMs are better for certain applications than others as well. So just other things to be cognizant of.
Jason, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you have a $10,000 pickup truck, for argument's sake, and you're putting $8,000 into it. At what point do you say enough is enough? And that's something that is a very cost-saving thing for the town, where you say, okay, once we get to a certain point, this thing is scrap value, and you don't want to get to that point. I don't know how many vehicles we had that were the frames were rusted through. They're welding frames and putting pieces in it, and it's they're spending thousands of dollars upon thousands of dollars just to keep them running. And probably pull Jimmy into this for a minute, and you guys just got rid of a few trucks that were pretty bad.
Yeah, they're about 20 years old or so.
Jimmy, and you can actually, this is perfect because, how much equipment do you have? You've got your vehicles over in parks, but you also have a whole, collection of equipment over there as well. And so, you've got your equipment. Highway has their equipment. Water has their equipment. Building maintenance has equipment. I mean, you can see, the boxes that we're dealing with instead of looking at things holistically, which could, if we did look at it holistically, it allows us to make the best financial decisions and the best financial investments for the town. But it also helps us, I think, find savings. And in this environment right now, where we're looking at post-coronavirus and the financial hardships that we're gonna, which I hope that I believe, which we are going to overcome. These are things that we need to be talking about. Is how do we find cost savings and actually enhance our behavior and use data to make these decisions. And right now, we don't even have the data to make the right decisions when it comes to budgetary items, trucks, equipment, and so forth, because they're all siloed.
Absolutely, because you're making them in the dark.
Right.
I think this is great.
It seems to be a kind of a penny wise to pound foolish mentality we've had, where we have old equipment that we keep fixing and then it breaks down and then wastes more time, which wastes more money.
Yeah, if you were to chart that out in historical data, it would look like a hockey stick, right? Like the age on the bottom, cost on the top.
Yeah.
The longer you have it, the more you run. I mean, it's natural. All fleets have that. I mean, there's different models out there for different operations of business. Understanding city equipment doesn't see the over the road mileage. That does take a play into your maintenance procedures, right? So
right,
now
exactly.
You're looking more at PMs based on than mileage. So,
right, exactly. So listen, I think it just makes us more cost efficient and cost effective, and that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to accomplish. It allows us as decision makers to see the picture holistically, rather than in silos, and those are things that we continue to try to break down. So I wanted to bring it to the board. I wanted the board to be part of the conversation and hear what this company has to say, and we can continue to have this conversation and determine next steps, collectively.
Okay, I'm good.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Fantastic.
Thank-
Phil, Jason, Christian, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
thank you.
My pleasure, Matt. If anybody wants to give us a call, just share the number and we'll be happy to answer the questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, Councilman Ed.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. That's something that we've been talking about for a couple months, and hopefully we can make a decision on that and move that forward as well. Next, we have on the agenda the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. And we do have, of course, our park superintendent, Jim Moderano, with us. And I believe we have the infamous Walton Jane Daniels jumping on board. I see Jane. There's Jane. It's funny. One of the things that the coronavirus, I think, has allowed us to highlight in the town of Yorktown are our trails. Over 40 miles of nature trails, and Walt and Jane, they've been so pivotal in creating our nature preserves and our trailways, and I understand, frankly, and I want to use this as a reminder, folks. And Jane, I know you're with us, and you can reiterate what I'm about to say. When you are going to one of our nature trails, if you see too many cars, please don't join the party. We had a problem down in T-Town this past weekend, where frankly we actually had to call the local police because there were so many cars, because so many people wanted to go enjoy the trails down in T-Town, that it did cause actually a traffic problem for the residents and and there's Walt. Walt, how are you? And so,
join you this evening.
yeah, well, we appreciate both of you. And I was just saying and you've reiterated this as well, so feel free to do so again. If you're driving to one of our trails and you get to the trailhead and the parking lot is overflowing with cars and people, there's plenty of other places to go.
That's right. And people can always ask us, where's a good place to go to hike? Yes, there are plenty of places in Yorktown, but there are other places as well. And some of them have even alternate parking areas.
Yeah. Yep. It was funny. Just one last fun story. I brought my family into Sylvan Glen at the beginning of the coronavirus. And somehow, some way, because I'm no Magellan, I got twisted around and I was like trying to figure out which way to get back. And I'm on my cell phone and there was like 2 or 3 other people who were trying to find their way back too. And I said, forget this. I'm not figuring this out. I called Jane at home. I said, Jane, which way do I go? And she said, which ways, when you see the stream, what shoulder's the stream on? I said, the stream's on my right shoulder. She goes, no, put it on your left shoulder and walk straight and you'll get back. I said, okay, no problem.
Yeah, I know Sylvan Glen quite well.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And it's getting a lot of attention and attraction. So thank you both. So can you explain to folks, we're talking about the MOU with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. Both Jim and John Tegeter are with us. Can you walk the board through and the folks at home what this MOU is going to allow and why it's good for the town?
Okay, what it does is it spells out who does what and what we do jointly. One section gives the lists what the Trail Conference can do. Another section lists what the town will do, and the third section says what both of us can do working together. The last section, I'll use an example, is talking with, say, Jim Marano and saying, hey, we could use some money for this. The Trail Conference apply for a grant. What can you do? What could you supply for lumber? And so on. Or I have a Boy Scout who has an Eagle project. They're supposed to supply their own materials. I let them know. We take care of things like that so that we don't overburden his staff that's involved with just the physical keeping up with the parks. The volunteers for the Trail Conference are basically a workforce, and they love what they do. Yeah,
Jim, any thoughts or questions about the MOU? Anything you want to add?
The commission has looked over the MOU. They'd agreed upon it. My staff is more than happy to do what's on this MOU, and I'm happy to continue this wonderful relationship we have.
Okay, there's something that's come up with the Trail Conference that's not negative in any way, shape, or form, but MOUs have come up in the past, and what the Trail Conference has now is sort of a model MOU. And by the way, the one with the town was sort of started it, but what they want to see is the list of parks where the Trail Conference maintains trails be listed as an appendix, okay? So that every time we would add something, it doesn't have to go through a massive review, but instead would say go to the Parks Department and the Parks Commission, and they said yes, yeah, just add that to it. So an appendix in an MOU doesn't have to go back to the board.
Adam, any concerns with that?
No, I mean, the board could authorize, for example, the superintendent of the Parks Department to, include additional park properties, as they either become town-owned parks or for whatever reason aren't originally included. But that should be something that's in the resolution.
In the resolution, okay. And Mr. Tegeter, any issues?
The latest iteration that I looked at made reference to parks and other town-owned lands, and if that's the case, then I don't have any issues. I always thought that the agreement to work together in that fashion was great. But on the latest trail, there's some future road issues that need to be left open for us.
Right.
And I think this does it.
Yeah. So one of the things that's kind of unusual was that the Mohansic Trailway is town-owned but not park land, protected parkland. And it took a bit of head scratching for both Walt and I to come up with other places that this had occurred. And there are odd places scattered around.
Both New York and New Jersey.
Right. Cranberry Lake Preserve has some of their trails on DEP property. Okay. Is that protected or is it not protected? So just saying it's town-owned land gives us a little flexibility. And right now, I don't know how many more parks will come under the Parks Department and have trails on them.
Hopefully lots, but I'm not predicting it.
Right.
We don't mind being odd sometimes anyway, so.
No, and since for those who are on the call right now, Yorktown has more parks, more trails in the town than any other municipality, and that includes state park, county park, and non-for-profit, as well as the town-owned ones. And
wow, that's great.
That shows some vision that Linda Cooper had years ago on getting, parkland, and they're connected. The trail system is amazing.
It is.
And I know people are really appreciating it right now.
That's one of the silver linings of this whole pandemic is the assets of our nature trails really coming to light and people really enjoying them. And you and Walt have been trailblazers in making sure that we've got those trails to enjoy right now. So thank you both for all your efforts. Do you want to, while we have you, there's a resolution for the board to consider later in the agenda regarding the Trail Conference's application for a Greenway Trails grant to repair sections of the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway. Do you want to touch upon that while we have you?
Oh yeah, that would be great. The Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway runs through a number of municipalities. It was to be a road, and that never happened. There are places where I wouldn't say it was overused. It's just, it hasn't been taken care of as well. And the Trail Conference had decided that they were going to wanted to undertake that. So we're applying for a grant to buy materials. It's going to be, there's a very tiny portion of what we call the BPT that needs some work that's just near T-Town. And the rest of it is in the town of Cortland. But we need to have a letter of support from the board. And I believe I sent you a copy of a suggested letter. You can change it however you want, but it had the details you need to know there. It's at no cost to the town whatsoever. It's just sort of a blessing and saying, hey, go ahead and apply for the grant.
Yep. Great.
Do you want to do that one now?
Sure. I mean, I've got no problem doing it now. It's on the resolutions to be passed from the supervisor's office. Resolved, the town board supports the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference's application for a Greenway Trails grant to repair sections of the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway. And I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. So there you go, Walt, and there you go, Jane. And I'll get you another that's a formal resolution from the town board supporting the grant application that we'll share with you along with a cover letter.
Okay, I have another question on the MOU. I have to take for that making the list of parks that we maintain trails, or I should say where the trails are, has to go back to the Trail Conference for a signature because that's a slight change in what you had seen. And so I would say that Matt being able to sign this would be great. I guess you're going to have to bring this to the board meeting next week. But I will get that back to the Trail Conference when you give me the okay.
Yeah, perfect. So if there's no objections from the board, we'll add it to next week's agenda, authorizing me to sign the MOU. But I wanted to make sure that we were able to pose any questions to Walt and Jane and to John and to Jim and Adam collectively and see if there was any feedback from the board.
I just want to thank Walter and Jane for everything they do, number one. And yeah, let's get it moving for them.
Yeah, I also want to say that we have wonderful volunteers that work with us, And when the two people say, well, what happens when you retire? No, we're already thinking of who who will put into some positions.
You're not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, it's not. No, probably not. But it's we're
Definitely
busy
not.
training them.
Thank you, Jane. And
Thank
Walt.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love you guys, Jen and Dan. It was wonderful hearing you.
It's been a pleasure working with you guys over the last 4.5 years, and hope to keep going.
Oh yeah, we really like working in the locally here. It is absolutely wonderful to go out the door and in 7 minutes you're on a trail or you're doing some trail work.
Yep,
we can't do it now. We've been told we can't do anything until restrictions. We've already been noting some things. We can't.
We have a long list.
Part of the problem, though, is that my wife said if I keep voting on these trailway things, I have to get out and walk them.
Yeah, come on there. Come on there,
Well,
Council.
we have an open invitation for anybody who would like to go and walk and see the giant boulder or the Quarry Oak.
Yep.
We'll be glad to take them once the restrictions are off.
Perfect.
Hey, Ed, when you go out and walk, let me know. I'll come and watch. Okay. And, Walter and Jane, you guys can't retire. All right. Because how's Matt getting out of the woods?
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
We
By
got
the
other
way,
people
Jane-
who we've
Jane,
got
my
other
son-
people who know the trails.
Right.
Yeah, Jane, my son Charlie still talks about the hot chocolate that you gave him when we went hiking in the fall. So
Well, when you're 4 years old, let's make your priorities the right ones.
that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Well, folks,
Jane, do
thanks
you
so
guys
much.
still have a map of the trails in Yorktown?
There's a brand new one that's out on, and the town website links to the new maps.
Right.
Yep.
Excellent.
And
And as soon as we can get out on the trails, we'll replace the ones that are in the kiosks, which are wrong at this point in a large.
Okay.
Yeah, we can handle that for you too. Let's talk offline about that.
okay, that would be great. And thanks for pitching in on some stuff to get a tree that we couldn't go out and take care of, and it blocked a trail.
Yep,
Yeah.
our pleasure. Thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate
Okay.
you both.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
folks, thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care.
Good night.
Yeah, Jen.
Yeah.
Good
night.
Bye.
Just awesome. Just awesome. All right, next on the agenda is 102 Hitching Post Lane. We are joined by Mr. Lake Mohegan himself, not from his paddleboard though.
I see him.
Ken Belfer. Ken, how are you?
Very well, thanks. And it was nice hearing from Jane and Walt. You know, one of the trails that we worked on with them is in Rock Hill Park in Mohegan Lake. And I've been around that and many of the other trails over the last month, and it's helped me sane on the weekends. I just wanted to say that I'm joined by the other two members of the Housing Board, Maura Gregory and Judy Smith.
Hey, Maura. Hey, Judy.
Hey, ladies.
We were supposed to have, and I don't know if she's still in the waiting room, it would be a 203 area code, Diana, if she is, but we were supposed to have the person trying to sell an affordable unit. But we can proceed, without them.
Yeah, why don't you, Ken, can you give us and us and the personal, a Cliff Notes version of what we're looking at here and what we're doing?
Yes. Lori Garofalo.
Hold on one second. We got some background noise. If everyone could just make sure you're on mute unless you're talking. Thank you very much. Continue, Ken.
Yeah, Lori Garofalo, the daughter of the owner of an affordable unit at 102 Hitching Post Lane in the Bridle Ridge subdivision in Yorktown, reached out to the town assessor asking, letting her know that her mom passed away at the end of March, and she knew that it was an affordable unit that her mom had purchased, and she wanted to know what she has to do to sell the unit. So she's in the process of cleaning the unit out. She seemed to be very appreciative of the fact that the affordable unit allowed her mom, I don't know if it was to remain in Yorktown or to return in Yorktown. I know Lori indicated that she had grown up here and gone through the school systems. So she understands that it was an affordable unit, and I've had a lot of correspondence and discussions with her. Kim Penner was pulled a copy of the deed restrictions, so they spell out pretty clearly the process to be followed. And the first step in the process is for the owner of an affordable unit wishing to resell it to send an official notice to the town. I understand that notice has been sent, but I indicated to Lori that I didn't know if she had the legal right to represent the estate. And she has a sister, and I don't know if there are any other next of kin. She has subsequently paying the services of an attorney and is filing in court to be appointed the executor of her mother's estate. So I will leave this decision to the town attorney as to whether Lori can give notice at this time, or whether the notice she's given is just informal until she's actually appointed. In any case, I wanted to get the ball in because she has the burden. The family has the burden of carrying a mortgage payment. They're not living in the house. And so it can be a long process. So I wanted to get to square one. I just want to tell a very brief anecdote that she shared. She'd share it live, that one of the other affordables, who I will not mention by name, but in Myrtle Ridge, who happens to be a Yorktown firefighter, she said saved her mom's life on a couple of different occasions by coming over when something happened. So she was really appreciative of that, and that was really nice to hear. Anyway, so the first thing that has to happen is legal notice be given to the town. The second thing is a decision by the town board, and the housing board would provide a recommendation, and we have provided that recommendation in writing this morning to the town board about whether the town wants to exercise its right of first refusal over the purchase of the unit. And the town can exercise its right of first refusal and then assign that right to a designee through the town's affordable housing program, who would then be the actual ones who would purchase the home. And there's a timetable laid out in the deed restriction that the town has 60 days from the date notice is given to the town of the intent to sell to make the decision about exercising its right of first refusal. And then there's a further period of time if it assigns that right of refusal, doesn't assign it and was just going to buy the unit, I think it has 3 months to close. If it does assign it, there's an additional after that 3-month period for the designee selected to close on the purchase. Obviously, the family hopes that it won't be a 60-day plus, 90-day plus 120-day process altogether. And that's why we got to work on this right away.
No, it's great. It's great. And I want to thank Councilwoman Roker for also bringing it to my attention as well. And we're happy to provide any help and assistance that we can to get the process moving, both for the housing board and also for her family. So as a point of information, I did receive the letter today in the supervisor's office. So Adam, if we can just determine whether or not she has the legal authority to send that letter, that'd be very helpful.
Based on what I've heard this evening, my position would be that the notice is not effective yet.
Okay. That's okay. So Ken, what's the next step?
Meantime,
you need the board.
In the meantime, we've been working with. Sure.
Ken, can you describe for me, assuming the board, exercises its right to purchase and assigns it, I guess it gets assigned to a designee picked through the affordable housing programs procedures. That's what the deed restriction says. I'm just Can you elaborate on that procedure? How does that work? You guys have a queue? I mean, what's the status of that?
Yes, I can elaborate on that. And in addition to the deed restriction, there's Article 7 of Chapter 300 of Yorktown zoning, Section 300-39 on affordable housing that also spells out some of the information about selection. We have a waiting list. It's a fairly old waiting list because we haven't sold a unit in more than a decade. So I don't know how good it is or not. What we would do is we would want to get the information out within the community. We would want to do some, hopefully, press releases that would be covered in places like the Journal News and the Yorktown News and the Northern Westchester Examiner. So do some basic marketing. The Section 339 indicates we have to, it's basically date of time of application that's used to choose the party that the home goes through. So you go down the list, and the person with the earliest date of application, you would screen first. They would have to be eligible under the guidelines in Section 339. Those guidelines in regard to home ownership indicate the person, the household has to be making less than 80% of area median income. Just as this is a 2-bedroom home. 80% of AMI in 2020 for a 2-person household is 80,560. For a 3-person household is 90,640. For a 4-person household, 100,640. So just to give you an idea of the maximum income for eligibility. The housing board under the regulations has the role of establishing the resale price. We've run through the scenario for that and gone over it with Lori. It involves doing calculations, and then it involves any significant improvements that have been made by the homeowner being added to the resale price if they've been approved by the town. So we're going through that process to get the ball rolling. And just as a real guesstimate right now, we're talking about a price of $120,000 as the ballpark price of this unit, which makes it just a fantastic opportunity for somebody trying to buy their first home in the town of Yorktown. I don't know if I've answered your questions.
So it's the housing board that really does the majority of the heavy lifting here in terms of finding a buyer.
Yes.
Okay.
So can I ask you something, Grant? Whatever was the initial purchase price and a sale, so the difference is how much is for the housing board and how much is the person who owned the property?
So the initial purchase price was $109,963.44 to be exact, back in December 21st, 1998. That's the price that Jeanette Garofalo purchased the house through the Yorktown Affordable Housing Program for.
And Ken, so this was this particular unit was already in the affordable housing program, correct?
Yes.
Great. I mean, I've got no problem.
I would like to see the house stay in the affordable housing program.
Yeah, I have no issues.
Yeah, I think it should stay in the affordable housing program. And what would a house in that area bring approximately, Ken? Or on the affordable end, I know they can only go a certain percentage over what the house was initially bought for when the person who wants to get out of it this point or has passed can sell it for.
So, it's based on the law. So the calculations based on these deed restrictions have the price. They bought the house for 109,000, close to 110,000, and it would be close to 120,000 that they'd be selling it for now. Very, very minimal appreciation is allowed by their set of deed restrictions. Obviously, this has got to be way less than half the market price. You know.
And we're talking about a unit that was built in Bridal Ridge specifically for the affordable housing program. So it doesn't have the bells and whistles of every unit in Bridal Ridge.
No, it's much smaller as well.
Yeah, again, I've got no concerns and no issues. So just if you want to provide next steps for the board, we can move this along and help the family.
Agreed.
Okay. So the next step will be when the town attorney deems that legal notice has been given to the town. That would be the time that the town should be responding about exercising its right of first refusal and expressing its intent thereafter, whether it's going to assign that right of first refusal to somebody selected from the waiting list for affordable housing.
So Adam, can you and I just have a conversation? We have to figure out how we communicate to the family that the notice they sent. I think you have to examine the notice, and then we can make a determination whether or not it is in fact invalid. And then we can take the next steps that we need along with Ken and the housing board, right?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so then Ken, we'll keep our eyes open. So we're gonna. Why don't you and Adam circle back tomorrow? And I know Councilwoman Roker, if you want to be part of the conversation, you're more than welcome to. You're the liaison.
Okay.
But we can just circle back to make sure we're properly communicating with the family to get the requisite notice. And once we receive that, then we can take the next steps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks all of you.
Thanks so much. So everyone stay well.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Next on the agenda, we have our town engineer, Michael Quinn, joining us in regards to, this is the Featherbed development. And do we have Joe Rena with us as well? I see Joe. We have John Tegeter, our town planner. Good evening, Joe. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Hi, Joe Rena.
Hi, everybody.
Why don't we start?
Yeah, we were waiting for Mike, I think, Mike Quinn to jump on. Joe, why don't you, so this is in regards to a 6-lot subdivision off of Jacob Road. We've seen this before the board. Joe, do you want to provide a synopsis as to what we're discussing tonight?
Sure. Do you want me to go through the project? I can bring up a map of the project.
It was circulated to the board. Does the board need to see the project?
Yep.
I think we have seen it before. Joe, this is the same old, presentation. There's a circle and, the palms and all together.
Yeah, it's the same project. The board had approved a flexibility standard subdivision on this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can proceed, Joe, without the.
Okay, so essentially we're at the stage, we've been through the planning board, we have preliminary approval from the planning board, and we're in front of the health department. And we're grappling with the issue of sewering the project. So the nearest public sewer for the project is at the entrance to the field home. I'm sorry, to the.
Joe, do you have a map that you can pop up there for us, just so the folks at home? I mean, I should be more accommodating. I apologize, because this is on our cable access channel and on our website. Do you have something that you can pop up there for us?
I could, if you let me share the screen, we'll do that.
Diana, can you let him share the screen, please? Thank you. Mike Quinn, how you doing?
Good. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Mike.
Good evening,
Hey, Mike.
What's
Hello.
going on, Mike?
Perfect.
So this is the project location. It's at the intersection of Catherine Street and Jacob Road. The field home and I'm drawing a blank at the name of the facility here on the left.
Seabury. Is it Seabury? The
Seabury or Glassberry?
Thank you very much. Anyway, so the public sewer is located. This is a blow up of the extension of the project. So the public sewer is located at the entrance here to the Seabury, and it's about 500 feet from the beginning of the property. So with the project, we're constructing a private road to come into the property to service the 6 lots. And the project is down gradient from this manhole, so it cannot be served by gravity, and we need to pump the sewage to that location. So, you know, we looked at various scenarios on how to do this. And the one we settled on is a low pressure sewer system. There would be a low pressure main, which would run from the cul-de-sac here all the way up through the private road, up Catherine Street, and connect to the existing manhole here.
Okay.
Then each individual residence would have its own pump facility. It would be a low pressure pump system, an E1 system, which would consist of a pump chamber, 2 pumps. The pump chamber will be oversized to allow for additional 1-day storage. And in addition to that, there will be a transfer switch connection for a generator in the event that there's a power failure. A portable generator could be hooked up to it to pump down each individual station. So in terms of the scenario that's been settled upon is that each, of course, the developer would install all the systems and the entire force main network up to the connection point. So each resident would have, as I said, their own individual system, which can either be owned and maintained by each individual homeowner, or there could be a homeowners association formed, which each homeowner would contribute to on an annual basis, and they would be responsible to own and maintain each individual system. Now, what I mean by each individual system, the main, which would start at the cul-de-sac and run up and connect at Seabury, would be owned and maintained by the town as required by the health department, because that's considered a public main. And from that, there would be a service connection to a valve box at each property line. So the town would be responsible up to that valve box. Then from that point up to the residents, all of the piping, tanks, etc., would then be privately owned and maintained, as again, by the homeowner or by the homeowners association. So this is the terms of which we've agreed upon and hope to move forward with. And Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I did. Joe, I mean, your description was perfect. But there's a few things that the health department wants the town to be responsible for. One is we have to, as Joe mentioned, be responsible for the force main that runs in the right of way, well, to the property line of each house, because it's a private road, and the 500 feet along Catherine Street. That would all be owned and maintained, installed at developer's cost, but then owned and maintained by the town. They also want the town to be responsible if there's an extended power outage, and each of these units has enough capacity for a 1-day holding time. But if there was an extended power outage, they want the town to bring a mobile generator in and, service every all the 6 lots here. So we do already own this mobile generator. It's on the back of a truck. So we would basically take it to each lot, we'd pump it down, and we'd move, throughout the street. So they want us to be able to do that. They also want the town to maintain a spare pump. In the event that someone's pump fails, they want the town to have a pump available. So Joe and I had talked, and he had written up in the letter that the developer would furnish the pump to the town, and then we would just hold it in our attic stock. And then the third thing is that if there was a situation where, whether it's an individual homeowner or the homeowner association failed to complete repairs to the individual septic system, that the town will come in and make the repairs. So basically the health department wants the town, they want to come to the town if there's ever an issue. They don't want to have to chase down individual owners. They feel like that's the town's obligation and responsibility.
With the town, Mike, if my understanding is correct, the town would then back charge the owner for all costs for the repair, correct? As well as the purchase of the replacement equipment and a 20% administrative fee.
Yes, that's the terminology that we want to put in there. Yes.
Right. It's not like we'd be coming in to do the work for nothing. We'd be coming in and charging the homeowner with a 20% administrative fee on top of the total cost.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure the public's clear on that.
Yeah, so the last part of this is, so the health department doesn't want us just to agree to it. They actually want us to adopt this in the town code. So we would need to amend.
Can you explain to me what would the amendment be? Because my understanding was there's three options that were laid out. The third option, the county health department shot down. The first option puts the town on the hook for basically everything, and sets a very dangerous, in my mind, a very dangerous precedent. And that's why we're going with this second scenario.
I agree.
And so, can you just explain to us what the amendments to the town code would be?
So the amendment to the town code would be pretty simple, but they want the health department is worried, I guess, that a future change in town position might say, hey, the owners have to be responsible for all of this mobile generators and everything. So they want us to put in our town code this specific subdivision that like either it's a reference back to the approval documents, which lay out the scenario number 2, or we'd have to itemize those items in the town code.
Have we ever done that before for development?
No.
I'm about to say, I don't recall ever doing that.
We've never done that. This is a policy change, I think, that's been adopted by the health department over the last decade. And I reached out to the health department, and Joe and I have been talking to them as well. So they showed us, I think this has been done recently in, they mentioned Armonk, which is North Castle, and Mount Kisco. So this is, I guess, the new way of them approving these projects, because I guess they're worried, a future change in town policy might eliminate some of these requirements that they're
moving forward.
Are agreeing to up front.
That we're going to have to adopt similar laws or amendments to our town code based on each development?
If there's low pressure pumping systems, which are very rare, we don't often do low pressure systems, but this is one example where, as Joe mentioned, there is no other feasible option to get sewers here. So the only other low pressure sewers I believe we currently have are along 202, the business district.
Yep.
And that was done like a long time ago.
There is one more in Dorchester Heights subdivision, but that hasn't been connected, but the infrastructure is in place.
Okay.
Can I jump in here for a moment?
Please.
I got some problems here. This development here, each parcel or each house has their own storage tank. Am I correct on that? For approximately a day, was it 1,000-gallon tank they put in the ground in case of power failure?
Right, it'd be set up for 1 day storage.
I don't think it's 1,000 gallons, but
No, it's not 1,000 gallons. It's additional 500 and change, so that the health department wants. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, I don't think the onus should be on us to have to bring in a generator for this. One of two things has to be done here. Either we have to put in our code at this point before this project goes through, that each of these with this particular type of system has their own generator in place, which quite frankly, people should have in this day and age anyway. And if something should happen that, you know, there's a catastrophic failure, their generator doesn't run, of course, we're going to come in and do what we have to do to make sure that the sanitary line is running. But I don't think that we should have to bring our generator over there to run their pumps.
I mean, is that a plausible scenario, Joe or Mike, with the County Department of Health? I mean, it seems like the three scenarios we were given were presented to the Department of Health, correct?
We reviewed, you know, just different ways of getting this done. But to Tom's question there, we could, the way to avoid the town being responsible for the mobile generator is each individual owner would have to have a permanently installed emergency generator.
Yeah, I agree with that. For sanitary reasons alone. I mean, if there's a catastrophic failure and all their generators go down, of course, the town is going to jump in and we're going to make sure that the sanitary stuff is taken care of. But to that point, you know, they should have to take care of their own running of those low pressure pumps to get from point A to point B. As far as
the only problem that it presents on our end is a monetary one, because the health department won't accept it to be a portable. They want a on the ground standby generator, which would add, you know, somewhere of an $8,000 to $10,000 additional cost to the already $25,000 system that just on the lots. That doesn't even include the force main. So that's, you know, that's the only additional burden really that it's adding to each of the proposed residences. So we're going maybe from a $25,000 system to a $35,000 system.
Yeah, I understand your plight there, Joe. But I also think that, well, either that or the builder can put his own generator in just to run these pumps. It should be $10,000 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 houses, which kind of breaks it up a little bit anyway.
Have we ever required a generator be installed for any of the other similar systems that are in the town of Yorktown?
No. Let me ask a question, Mike, to my friend. Mike, I live on Sorrells Drive, and I'm a part of the Halleck's Mill Sewer District. When there is a blackout, you don't come to my house to pump out anything, do you?
No. You're on a gravity system, I'm assuming, but most parcels are on gravity. All of the lines in the street are typically gravity. So the difference on this group of homes is that the line in the street would be pressurized, meaning every house has to be pumped into it.
See, the only concern I have is with regard to your department. In addition to doing whatever that your people would be doing in the sewer plant, they now have to look over their shoulder and go, okay, we've got to run out to these particular subdivisions that have these low pressure systems. So I understand why the county would want you to put it in the code, because you're essentially amending the way we do business right now.
That's exactly right. You know, it's kind of a policy decision, you know, if we want to do this. I was reaching out to the engineers in Cortland, because I think they've done several of these low pressure systems in the last couple of years. And what they did in Cortland is they put out a service contract, an on-call service contract, because, you know, when there's a power outage, usually there's a lot of other, you know, demands on the sewer department.
Yeah, that's
So-
what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, so in those situations, they have an on-call plumbing contractor that will do that work. So essentially, we could do something similar.
Okay.
So, if we get more of these, I mean, I know with the Halleck's Mill Sewer District Extension Project, there was in the planning stage, there was something like 80 to 90 of these low pressure systems.
Right.
So there's likely to be, more of these systems in the future. So, whatever we come up with here, we're probably going to replicate it in the future. And Tom, I mean, I think you have a great point about, we should come up with how we want to handle this. And then in the future, this is going to last probably a long time. So if we're
Real
not
quick,
100% comfortable.
Where's John Tegeter? Because when we're talking about coming up with a solution, doesn't that impact the planning board and the planning board's ability to make to evaluate these projects?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's this turned out to be a significant one. And prior to approval, this kind of thing probably is better worked out before then. We didn't know necessarily what the health department's changing attitudes and policies are. But, one way to explain it is that you may not have had 6 lots here. You may have had 3. So I think it's important that the planning board gets out ahead of these things before they're setting lot counts.
Does the change in policy and the potential scenario regarding the sewers, would that impact the planning board's approval of the project?
I think
Approved
that
already, Matt. We can't stop it.
I think that this kind of information is necessary for them to make a good informed approval and decision on an approval.
And so, and to Alice's point, though, they've already approved this project, correct?
Not with this solution.
Well, I think, John, I think it was approved with the with town sewer, and then the details of that town sewer, I've been working with Joe Rena on, and that's what's kind of evolved over the last few months.
Yeah,
That's correct.
It's always been a low pressure system or some type of pump system. And the reality of the planning part of this is at the end of the day, the major part of the burden is really on the developer, because they're going to bear the expense of all the infrastructure. Now, what we're talking about is this fine point on the maintenance or upkeep, or making sure that it's being powered when there's a power outage. And with scenario 2 or scenario 3, it's really comes down to a portable pump generator provided by the town, or a permanent generator installed by the developer for each of the lots. As far as this being something out of the ordinary, it's not. It's done. It's being done throughout the county, these low pressure systems. So it's not like it's some kind of new technology. But as I said, at the end of the day, the major part of the burden is on the developer to put in the infrastructure.
So then, in regards to the scenarios that are laid out before the board in the memo that was circulated, is there flexibility in these scenarios, or are these the options?
There is some duplicity in what we're showing, because my understanding with discussing this with the health department, it was either provide backup generation or 1-day storage. So we're doing both. And, which I said we were doing a little extra than, the cost of the extra capacity isn't really that much as far as the tank goes. But, flexibility goes, they're pretty set on what they want here. And they were pretty direct with Mike and I when we met with them on what their expectations were and how far they would go. I think they were willing to listen a little bit, but not very much. So I think scenario 2 or 3, well, any of those scenarios they would go with. But
I mean, three is not an option. It's saying it's not the preferred scenario by the health department.
So Matt, just on that point, I think that when we sat down with the health department, you know, their preference is, number one, the town owns everything, including all these pumps and tanks and everything else. We didn't want to do that, so we explored scenario number 3. And what the guy said was that he would have to speak to the, you know, deputy commissioner, because that's not how they're currently approving projects. So that's the summary bullet there, was that's not preferred by the health department. We'd have to re-engage them if we wanted to go with scenario number 3.
The reason I'm asking is to solve Councilman Diana's point. In scenario 3, each pump will be wired to a permanent standby generator.
Right, that they would accept that.
I'm sorry?
The health department would accept that if each lot has its own permanently installed emergency generator, you know, with some language in the homeowner association that they'll have to maintain that in perpetuity, then that would work as far as the health department is concerned. I think the developer wasn't so keen on that because
the cost of the
you know, because of the cost. Yeah, that's the
totally
the
get
back and forth.
The thing that if one generator could be put in, and I don't know the amperage or so forth that these generators put out, but one generator could be put in someplace just for that purpose. The cost of that wouldn't be as high as putting 6 generators in for 6 pumps.
You know, I don't think it's, though, totally unreasonable to say to the developer here, why don't you put generators on there and you increase the value of the house and the selling point and the attractiveness of it. I'm concerned that the town, if we're the ones bringing the generators, how, you know, even if there's a deed restriction, how do we make sure that the bills get paid? How do we make sure that the homeowner, you know, doesn't you know, play the game of, well, I knew nothing about this, and I know the law is law, but, you know, it could create a ongoing issue.
I mean, I just don't think the town should be in the Roto-Rooter business here. I mean, I don't think that's our role. And so the less that you know we have on our obligation, I think the better. I just don't see where the county health department's how much flexibility they're gonna give us on it. I mean, it looks like scenario 2 is the only one that they're willing to go on.
I have a question. Joe, who is going to collect the sewer taxes, the county or the town?
Both.
So Vishnu, I can answer that question. The sewer taxes, you know, there'd be a sewer tax on their tax bill. Currently, those sewer taxes are collected and paid to the county because this is in Peekskill Sewer District. Mm-hmm. There's also a charge for usage on the water bill, and that money goes to the town sewer fund. So,
but if we had to go make repairs, how would we recoup that money?
That's right.
So the cost for us to maintain, because over time we're going to have to, you know, service these this force main. We're going to have to flush it every couple of years, and then if there's ever a break, we're going to have to repair it. That cost we would take from the sewer fund. So all of the people that are paying for usage, that those fees go into the sewer fund, and that's what we use for maintenance and repair.
So they will
when do they pay? I'm sorry.
They will have a separate sewer maintenance tax, and in the user and the water. So all 3 taxes will be added in their bill.
Well, there'd only be 2, right? There'd be the sewer tax that on their tax bill that the town collects, but pays the entire amount to the county. And then there's the usage on their water bill that goes to the sewer fund, and that's where we use the funds to do any maintenance and repair work.
Now these pumps are at the houses, correct? Am I correct to assume that
they'd be out? Yeah, the pumping system would be outside the home, but on their private property.
Right, and you know where we run into a little bit of a slippery slope here is this. You know, us bringing a generator in to run these things could be a gift to public funds to that particular homeowner or homeowners. Where if If I have a septic ejector pump, the town's not going to come in and plug into that and run it for me. I have to figure it out.
That's the part that I don't understand, that it would be assumed that we would go in with a generator when we're asking the rest of our residents in Yorktown, you're on your own for at least 72 hours. But within that day, we've got to run up to these homes and put a mobile do a generator there. Joe, I don't want you to think that we don't welcome new development, but the question becomes: is this right for us?
Yeah, look,
but at the same time, I just think that if I have to choose between having the town own and maintain the entire system, including the pump, having the town, we're going to get a permanent easement for access that will assess each homeowner. I just don't think that we need to go down that road. And so if the county is giving us two options here, that where we are owning and maintaining the entire system, or we have to pull a mobile generator up there. I mean, I'm sorry, I choose the mobile generator. I don't think that we should be owning and maintaining an entire system, because that's going to set a very dangerous precedent, a very costly precedent for the town moving forward.
Mike, for the on-call service, can we, would it be possible for us to tell them that they would have to bring a generator up there if we had a problem?
Who would we ask to bring the mobile generator?
If we contract it with one of those on-call services,
right,
we would then tell them what we would need from them in advance if we had, let's say, a blackout or whatever, and the money they bill us, how would we get that money back?
So our proposal would be to put that in the town code under the sewer section. I would work with Adam, the town attorney, on the language, but it would say that whatever costs we incur, whether it's for the pump outs, bringing an emergency generator in, replacing a pump that they refuse to do, that we would send them a bill and add a 20% administrative fee. And then they would be obligated to pay that.
But who
are we sending the bill to?
The homeowner.
So we would bill the individual homeowner through the sewer district to recoup the money that the town puts out, whether it's a mobile generator or a flush or some type of repair.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So they would be getting billed and charged for it. Is that what I'm to understand?
That would be somebody. Yes, but that would be for work on their private property.
Who is going to keep the bookkeeping and engineering? Is the engineering department and the sewer department? There has to keep an eye on this one. Something goes wrong all the time, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the sewer force main that would be running in the private roadway and then 500 feet along Catherine Street would always be the responsibility of the town. As part of this project approval, that we're taking, we have to own this line and we're responsible for all the maintenance and whatever repair costs come up in the future.
In sum and substance, Mike, could you just go through the three scenarios here again on what they want to do?
The first scenario would be that the town the developer installs the pump systems on each of the 6 lots, and then the town owns those pump systems. And all of the piping from the private property to the street, and then everything in the street the town owns, of course. So essentially that's option number one. So any repairs, the owner would call the town. Any problem, they would call the town, and we would have to respond and make the repairs. So that's option one, and that's what the health department likes to see or is asking if we will do. Option number two is that we don't want to be in the ownership of these pump stations on each property. So the owner has to own it and be responsible for it, or as Joe said, the homeowners association might be responsible for it as well. So each individual owner has this pump station on their property that they own and are responsible for all the costs and maintenance or whatever comes up. The pumps typically last 8 or 10 years. So at the end of that period, they'll have to, be responsible for the replacement costs.
The individual,
The individual will be responsible for that.
individual
in,
homeowner would be-
option number 2.
not the town. The individual homeowner would be responsible for the replacement costs.
Right. Now, under option number 2, if the
Mike,
owner
there will be a spare pump that the town will have, that's going to be
Correct.
provided.
That
to
we
the
would
town.
house. We would house one spare pump.
Right. Just in the event that the homeowner doesn't address it on their own.
Right. And so that's option number 2. Now, option number 1 is every owner has to have a spare pump, has to always have a spare pump. So there's 2 pumps in the bottom of this pump station, and then they have to keep 1 pump on the side. So, that's option number 1. I'm sorry, that was option, I'm getting confused with the options here, but I think that was option number 3. So option number 1 was a town owned the pumps.
Right.
And we
right.
would maintain the 1 spare pump in our shop. And then if we ever had to use it, we would be able to come in there and repair it with that pump.
Option 1, we own and maintain. Option 2, we backstop. Option 3,
which we can't do.
Option 3 we can't do because it says that it's not preferred by the county health. So it's either option 1, we own and maintain, which again, correct me if I'm wrong, we've never done before. And then option 2, we act as the backstop. And should they need, and if should something arise where the homeowner themselves does not correct or address, the town comes in over the top, corrects and addresses. And then according to Mike, which I want to get back to because I'm still not clear on this, the town would then bill the individual homeowner the expenses.
Yes, Matt.
What can I ask what option 3 was, just so I understand it?
Option number 3 is that the homeowner is responsible to own and maintain their own pumping system. The town is not going to be responsible for the backstop to do any repairs. So in that case, each owner has to maintain a spare pump on their own. And then each owner has to have a permanently installed emergency generator.
And that's not preferred by who?
Not preferred by County Department of Health, according to the memo.
The health department said that if that's the option that we're going with, that the reviewers were not prepared to tell us it was okay. They would have to go to their bosses, the deputy commissioner, to find out if they would even allow that.
Right.
He said they have not allowed that in the past.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is somehow, and it's not necessarily for the purpose of being responsible for, but somehow the town needs to be involved to the extent where if the homeowner doesn't act, the town can step in and take care of it. And I think that's in options 1 and 2. That's what the main emphasis is. I mean, to be honest with you,
places like Joe, we've seen this in places like North Salem, right? That's what North Salem. Actually, I think North Salem owns and maintains, like over by
Peach Lake. That's correct, Matt.
Right. And so
and I don't think there was any. I don't think there was any idea on our part, on the client's part, that it was going to be anything different than really option 2. I mean, we always anticipated that the homeowners or the association was going to own and maintain the system. What's gotten a little fuzzy here was the health department kind of stepping in and saying, okay, well now we want the town to be
backstop.
Yes, and to be there with the pump when it's necessary and so on. They want to take that responsibility out of the hands of the homeowners, which I don't totally agree with them on. If they have a problem and they don't take care of it, their toilets are going to back up. I mean, they're just going to have problems. And I know that creates a public health issue, but they will be sure to resolve the problem whether they call a plumber or call the town if they know that there's a mechanism for them to call the town and have it pumped down.
Joe, the only concern I would have here is that those things are addressed and when the homeowner actually, before they buy the property, so that every time something happens with their sewer, they're not calling the town, that they have to be responsible for something.
Right, and I'm sure there could be some type of file declaration that gets attached to their title when they purchase it. Similarly to what we do with the stormwater management stuff. We have a maintenance agreement where the homeowner is understands that there's a responsibility on their part. We could do the same thing with this, or the homeowner association, or whatever.
My question still though is on the billing. I'm still concerned and I'm still unclear. How are we billing for the services that we as a town are providing?
Well, I think, what Joe just described, I think, is the way that I assume that this would go as well, right? So, most owners are going to be taking care of their system on their own. They own it. It's in their own interest to take care of it. We're the backstop. So we're only going to step in if they don't take care of it. But again, if we have to step in and take care of it, then the cost that we bear would be billed to the owner. And, it's no different than the stormwater maintenance agreements, that if the owners refuse to fulfill their obligation, then the town has rights under escrow or could put a lien on a property to recover the costs that were spent.
So, but the two questions I have though is, number one, where are we taking the money out of to pay for those improvements that they are failing to make, or the repairs? And then number two, how are you collecting that? I understand the escrow part, but it's not going, you can't, I guess I'm not clear on, are you taking money out of the sewer fund that we're collecting in taxes to go towards maintenance? And then how do you replenish that?
So the sewer fund is comprised of sewer taxes and the usage charges from the water bills. So that's essentially the revenue, and plus permits and miscellaneous things like that. So that would be the revenue. So in this case, the charge would be through the sewer fund. We have a cost code for maintenance and repair. So that's what we would use to pay for the repair. The invoice would be generated from my office, and it would, when we got the revenue back, it would be coded.
But I want to make sure that we can siphon money from the sewer fund to the maintenance, to your maintenance line, but your maintenance line is not going to be budgeted for it, right?
Well, I think that we have, I don't know what these costs would be. I would assume they'd be very minimal for the first, 10 years or something, because these systems typically don't require a lot of maintenance or repair. So
we might not be doing maintenance and repair. Isn't that correct, though?
Yeah,
the homeowner should be doing it.
Right.
Yes.
So the scenario in which we have to go and do it is a minimal likelihood.
And what sewer fund, Mike, are we pulling this out of?
Well, there's only one. The YS would be the sewer fund.
No. But is it Peekskill or is it Halleck's?
Peekskill.
Well, the sewer fund includes funds from both.
So, okay. So then let's take it to a more basic question. Is this in the Peekskill Sewer District or the Halleck's Mill Sewer District?
This is in the Peekskill Sewer District.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if I got this right, so we would be responsible basically from after the tank, or before the tank, from the pump, the whole line, and the and the pump, correct? So now we're still working forward on sewers possibly that are going to go up on Windmill and so on and so forth. So now is that going to be a new protocol that we're going to have to take on those systems also? Because some of those systems, I think there's 17 of them, are going to be pressurized systems.
Yeah, and the question is, are you going to have enough money? Because now you're doing individual homeowners rather than the homeowner calling in someone and letting them, they pay the cost of it directly to the plumber.
Well, I think it's in an owner's interest to deal with this on their own, right? Because if the town is forced to come in and make these repairs, then first of all we add on the 20% administrative fee, and then we're bound to all the rules and regulations the town has with prevailing wages and everything else. So most owners would have, whether it's a heating contractor, or a plumber, or a roofer, usually they're going to just do that on their own because it's just more cost effective and it's more under their control.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I might.
John, go.
So I guess I'm curious in this immediate discussion as to under what circumstances we would be forced to make a repair to a pump that belongs to somebody, to an individual. I don't see that happening. I don't know how we would be forced.
John, if I could try to answer that question, because this happened recently, a commercial property off of Route 6, where we got reported a sewer smell, and we went to investigate, and we believed or understood that the problem was not within the town right away, and there's nothing to do with the town. We believed it was something that was originating on someone's private property. And we mentioned, the inspector said something to the property owner, and the owner said, yeah, no, don't worry, it's not a problem. Now, we don't have rights to do anything more with that owner, other than we reported this to the health department, and we said, because that's their responsibility to, deal with a private owner that may have a sewer leak on their property. So the health department went to speak to the owner, and they actually did some dye testing on his property, and they ultimately came back and said that it wasn't a sewer leak, and problem solved or whatever. But if it was a sewer leak and the guy absolutely refused to fix it, and it happens to be one of these 6 lots that we're now talking about, the town would then be responsible to go in there and make these repairs.
But if it was a sewer leak in that scenario, it would be his lateral, let's say, or something on his property?
Yeah.
So we can't, are you saying that we can't do an enforcement action to make him fix it?
We don't have any rights to go on someone's private property to make them fix a sewer leak. That's true. Right.
No, we can do an enforcement action to make him correct it, right? Just as we could make an enforcement action if he had, a problem, a hole in his roof or something, and the place was going to be condemned unless he fixed it. There's property maintenance and so forth, is there not?
Right. Well, on this property on Route 6, we spoke to the building inspector because it was an operating business, and we were concerned that he may have to, issue an order to stop the business while we try to get this resolved. But, that's the extent of it. I don't know how you could mandate that somebody repair sewer. Like if it's on private property, we don't, as far as the engineering sewer department, we don't have any rights to do that. But we would certainly work with any resources we could to try to get action.
I think I have the same problems John has at this point. And we have no right to go on somebody's property. We have an easement, but if your water main breaks from the house to the curb box, that's the homeowner's responsibility. I understand all of our responsibility in the street, but we shouldn't be responsible for generators and repairing homeowners' pumps, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is just a clear-cut case of the county pushing it down the road.
Right, but if the county's not going to give us sign off, I don't disagree with you at all, Tom. For the record, I really don't. But if the county's giving us a mandate saying that here's your options, we have to figure out which one's best for us. And I'm just very concerned about setting a precedent that we're not going to be able to afford to keep.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions.
Yeah, John, go.
If I don't mind, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's kind of pick it up because it's very late.
I didn't mean to interrupt, John. I'm sorry. But
No, you didn't. Not at all. Not at all. So in all the 3 scenarios, they also have a holding tank, right? 500 gallons or thereabouts?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that right? Okay. Yeah. And so in scenario 2, which is what seems to be the way that we're looking to go, or the one in which they own their pumps, but we're the backstop. The backstop means that if we're forced to make a repair, that's part of the backstop. Also that we have mobile generator in the case of a power outage, right?
Yes.
So if there's a power outage, let's say it's 3 days long, we have to go out there for 3 days in a row and pump out 6 500-gallon tanks, right?
Well, the tank is at 1 day of storage, right? So, if somebody was fully utilizing all of their wastewater, at the average rates or whatever, then every other day we'd have to swing by there, hook up the mobile generator, pump down their system, and then move on to the next one.
Right. We'd have to do the six of those.
Yes.
Right. Multiple times along the course of the power outage, which in the last number of years, we have had some long ones.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So going back to where you were just moving to, Matt, this is, maybe this isn't a 6-lot subdivision. Maybe that's the solution.
Well, John, I don't know how the number of lots really affects it, because even if it were one, whether it were 1 or 3 or 6, we're still faced with the same issue.
Well, if it's 3,
one lot, I'll take that back. If it's one lot, then it's totally different, because the health department is really not getting involved. It's more the town administering a sewer connection. But any subdivision, whether we're creating multiple lots, the health department's going to be involved, and they're going to dictate their policy.
Well, maybe it's 3 lots and it's septic systems, or
But
maybe
that's the whole issue here. We can't do septic here. The soils, if we could have done septic, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, because we are far enough away from the gravity sewer where we're not in the position where the health department can force us to connect to the sewer.
right. And so maybe it's 3 lots and there's less of a burden to the town, or maybe it's 1 lot and there's no burden to the town. So I think it is pertinent that the solution to provide the services that's required for the homes, whether it's 6 or 3, is pertinent to the lot count. It's what the available infrastructure and what the land will support, and it's not supporting it in the correct way.
If it wasn't for this latest policy that the health department, or position that the health department is taking, this wouldn't be an issue, because we've done this before. We've done this in other towns, and it's all of a sudden now we frankly, when Mike and I went to meet with them, I don't think we were expecting to be going down this road. And
no, I agree with that. Nobody. We find ourselves in somewhat of a twilight zone here on this, but nevertheless, I think it's pertinent to the planning board's approval and what goes on this site. Not to mention that it's not just that. There's also this future farm stand, which I'm sure will have to be connected to the sewer as well, because it's going to have sanitary facilities.
If we would like to take the simplest route out of this, even if it's the additional costs of the generator, we would take the simplest route out of this. We had no expectation, as I said, we had no expectation of doing anything other than owning and maintaining the systems on our own. It's now the health department's need to have the town involved to step in if the homeowner doesn't maintain their system, instead of the health department stepping in and handling that aspect of it.
Right, but I have trouble understanding when they do such a thing. When is a homeowner not maintaining their sanitary sewer system?
Well, exactly. As I said, in the past, we've done these before, and we've never had this come up, and we've never had this requirement put on us.
Right, and there's people on septic in Yorktown that have failing septics, and they're pumping out twice a month.
Exactly.
And the health department isn't sending trucks up there to pump them out.
Right. I frankly don't think this is this is as much of a burden to the town as we, as we're making it to be. I think the frequency of this happening, where the town is going to have to step in and repair the pump, is minimal. It's very little exposure for the town because, first of all, we have a duplex pump system. So each system has 2 pumps. Not only does it have 1, but it has 2. So you've got the life of the system is essentially being doubled because you have 2 pumps that alternate. Each cycle they alternate. So you're extending the life of the pump. And if it's a clog or a backup, well, that's the homeowner. That's no different than if they had a gravity connection and they had a clog and a backup. They'd call a plumber in to resolve that issue. So the only thing left there is, what are we doing for backup power? Which, as I said, whatever is simplest is what we prefer. But there needs to be a mechanism for an enforcement, and that's what it is. It's an enforcement mechanism for the town to come in if the homeowner should not take the responsibility of repairing their system. And frankly, I don't know how often that would happen, or even how that would happen, because their sewage system would be inoperable. I mean, like I said, their toilets wouldn't be working. Would be, they'd be getting backups of sewage flow into their fixture. So I don't see the town's exposure being that great here.
Yeah, I'm not sure who is enforcing who on what, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
really, how's anybody going to even know if there's a problem unless it's reported? So some homeowner might call and say, my sewer's backing up, and call the sewer department or the engineering department, and then the engineering department go, well, you have to get your plumber to take care of that.
Yeah. I think you need language of whatever this law is and whatever the enforcement capability is to even move forward on the discussion.
I agree.
I'm also wondering if there's any way to put a disclosure form into any time the house is sold, that, make sure that all of this is signed off on by the homeowner.
Hey, just one last question over to Mike Quinn. Any sense how many people, if we're going to outsource this, how many people we have to hire if it's a multi-day power outage?
Well, I mean, for these 6 lots or 7, maybe 7 lots if there's a farm stand.
If we have to keep running mobile generators up there and we have another, Riley, and we're out for an extended period of time, how would your department manage that? And if not you and we're outsourcing, any senses to how many people they'd have to bring in?
Well, I think that they could pump down all 7. If there were 7 of these systems hooked up that all had to be pumped down, that would be done in a matter of a few hours.
Okay.
And it sounds like it would be, if there was an extended power outage, this would have to be pumped down every other day.
Mike,
but if you're going to add the 90 in the Hallex Mill, so we've got the 7 and then possibly 90 more.
Right.
Mike, do you think,
yes,
in what we've discussed with the health department, there's a way where, for example, the homeowners association would be required to have a maintenance contract with an outside contractor? Do you think that you can see them buying that?
Well, I'm actually looking because a lot of these requirements came in a letter we got, and so it's in writing from the health department in January. Joe, I mean, that might be something worth exploring. I mean, they want this. What was it, the terminology they used here? I mean, they want this codified. So they don't want like something to change down the road. They want this all set up front. So they want this like informal, easement language and things like that.
Can we do this, because we're just way over and we still have more on the agenda? So we still have, so scenario 3 is off the table because we don't believe that the county Department of Health is going to allow it. It seems, and this is what I'd say to the board, and I pose this to the board, are we in agreement that we do not want scenario 1, where the town will own and maintain the entire system, including the pump?
No, we don't want to do that.
No.
We don't want to do that.
Anyone, any other member of the board?
Well, I'm sorry.
Let me tell you something, you know, the whole thing is that the developer wants to put the burden on the town to manage the program, you know, their whole development go forward, you know. And I don't know whether it's good for the town, you know.
I just think it sets a dangerous, I mean, again, think about Hallett's Mill. I mean, it's not just these 6 or 7. It's an additional 100 that we're setting ourselves up to own and maintain the entire system moving forward.
Right.
And I'm not comfortable with setting that precedent right now.
Yeah, can I ask about scenario 3 again? So that's individual ownership.
Either the property owner will be responsible for maintenance and repairs, or the homeowners association.
And they have to have individual generators.
Correct.
Yes, permanently installed emergency
And why are you backing away from that?
This is not a preferred scenario, and that's the scenario that we love, but that's not the preferred scenario by the Westchester County Health Department. That's what
Right, but it is an available scenario, and it is technically feasible.
But it's not preferred by the Westchester County Health Department.
Okay, but it's not preferred by the town either. So,
you know, the question here is that I would have thought, and this is to Joe, that a home that comes equipped with a permanent generator would be more attractive to people, particularly up here.
Oh, I wouldn't question that at all. I would agree with you. So you know, if that's the sure route for us, I think that's the route my client would take. If I could suggest, I think now that we have feedback from everybody, that Mike and I maybe just have another call with the health department and let them know where we're going with this, and see if we can get any kind of flexibility on their part.
Or Joe, I'm sorry, John, if not that way, maybe one central generator owned by the homeowner association who is mandated to maintain on a regular basis, that would just run these pumps. That would knock out that $60,000 or $50,000 worth of generators putting in, down to 10, I guess. I'm not sure,
Right.
just to run those pumps.
Okay. I mean, that's a possibility.
That's something that you might throw out there and I'd say, yeah, that's fine. It's a dedicated generator just for sanitary use.
So at the end of the conversation here, I think it's pretty clear the board is. I don't think the board's comfortable with really any of the scenarios, and so if you could take the feedback that we've given you back to the Department of Health, is that a fair request?
I don't think I don't think I have any choice. So
well, can you take it to the planning board before you do that?
Yeah, I've already put in a letter to the planning board requesting to be on to discuss it.
No, I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're going to go back. So you're going to go back to planning, and you're going to go back to the county Department of Health, and then you're going to report back to us the results of both.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Sit right there, Mike. You're next.
Yeah, Mike.
Okay.
Joe,
Try to talk fast on this one.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
This one should be hopefully pretty simple. 320 Illington Road. Mike Quinn, you're on.
Okay, so this is an undeveloped lot, and they're proposing to build a new single-family residence. It's going to have a detached garage, and it's going to have private water, so it's going to have a water well and a septic system. So no town water and no town sewer.
Okay.
It's a large house. It's going to require a lot of earth moving for the foundation. And so this is over that 200 cubic yards threshold for a stormwater management permit. So that makes this a town board approval. So we've done some technical reviews with the architect. The plans that are that were given to the board are the revised plans that we feel are adequate. As far as stormwater, they're putting in some on-site bioretention basins. So the roof leaders and I think the driveway drainage will be directed to some on-site stormwater pond. So the only item I wanted to mention, which wasn't in my technical memo, is that this is an application that came in, in the last month or two. So it is subject to the new tree code. And I know Will Batista has been working with the architect on the tree counts. And the current numbers that we're looking at, let's see, there's 29 trees that have to be removed for the development. Now in the tree code, if you have to remove trees for a septic system, they don't count in the final count. So as far as the trees that do count towards the tree code, there's something like just about 400 inches of tree, right? Because if it's a 12-inch tree, we count the 12 inches. So there's about, it says 338 inches of trees that are being removed. They do plan to put back 13 trees with the new development. And for the remaining amount of trees that they don't have room to plant, they are proposing to pay a fee in lieu of additional mitigation. And so the fee that they worked out that they would owe into the tree bank is approximately $2,400, $2,412. So that's where we stand with this application right now.
Michael, have you run this application to the Tree Advisory Board? Because they work very closely on the new tree code, and I wouldn't want to cut them out.
Well, no, I don't think it's been referred yet, Alice.
Okay.
Referred other than, I think there was a preliminary referral to planning and conservation, is my understanding, but it has not been referred to all agencies.
Okay.
Mike, how far from 134 on Ellington Road? In the middle or all the way to the end, or where? The 320 Ellington.
I have it as 301, or I have it as 301 Ellington Road. That was the number that was on their application. And I know the architect, and it looks like the architect and the owner are actually on the call here. So did you guys want to?
The owner, this is the one. Is that the lawyer or somebody else is?
Gentlemen, do you know where? Can you give us a bit of a reference point on Ellington Road as to where this will be?
I don't have a distance from Route 134. It's other than to say it's far. It's adjacent to the
after the school.
Up there.
Before the school.
It's adjacent to it. That would be what their northern neighbor essentially.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Very good. I think that we would refer this out to necessary agencies. Any other questions from the board on the application?
No, not for me.
Tom, you're muted, Tom.
You're muted.
my lips are moving. Thank you, John, for saving face there for me. The stormwater permit, does that include the trees at this point, or can we go ahead as a town board action and issue the stormwater permit?
It's actually one application, Tom, so it would be one permit to cover both.
Okay, then we have to refer it.
Yep. All right, a motion to refer to all.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
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 And just for clarification, I looked it up. It's right before the yeshiva on the right-hand side, coming out of coming off 134.
So it's higher up and going down toward the school. Okay.
All right, so we'll refer those out and move forward with the application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry
you.
for the delay. Thank you for your patience.
All right, no problem. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, so we just have a few resolutions. I'm sorry, we did have one other item that we wanted to discuss, and that was the issue of stockpiling supplies of COVID related.
Yes.
We had I had a discussion about this with Councilwoman Roker and other members of the board in advance of as we continue to flatten the curve. We are seeing an abundance of supply, but there's also the concern of a rebound as well as a fall and winter rebound. And so we believe that it's prudent to begin stockpiling masks, gloves. Yep, John, you're good. Thank you. Masks, gloves, and gowns for our employees and potentially first responders, something that we would try to put together a potential MOU with the guidance of our town attorney. And so any comments from the board or thoughts on the board on doing this?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea, Matt, and then we should move forward with it, and let's start getting these supplies in, because when this first onset came, we were all scrambling to try and get stuff for our first responders and even for our employees.
I agree.
Yep, I think we're much better to source them ourselves than have to go through a middleman. We could get these when the price drops, have them for when they're needed.
Right. And I want to thank the county. They just delivered they delivered a couple thousand cloth masks in partnership with Hanes. We've begun, they're reusable cloth masks. We've begun dispersing those to our businesses, essential businesses that are currently operating. We're going to be dispersing those to some of our seniors and some of our senior housing residents as well. We're organizing that as we speak. If there are any small businesses who are currently operating who need masks, you can contact my office directly, 914-962-5722, extension 200, or you can just email me directly at mslater@yorktownny.org, and we'd be happy to coordinate a drop-off for you. The other thing, I'm sorry, ahead, Councilwoman Roker.
I was just going to remind everybody that the mask is required anytime you're in the public, outside, or even in a store. So hopefully people are wearing them.
Yeah, again, if you can't maintain social distancing of 6 feet, you have to wear them, which is basically anywhere in the public if you're congregating. And also, but as a reminder, if you're wearing a mask, even if you're wearing a mask, you have to make socially responsible decisions. It doesn't make you immune to anything and everything.
Correct.
So please make those decisions. Okay, we're going to move on to resolutions. Resolved, this is from the supervisor's office, that the town board authorizes the town supervisor to sign an agreement with the town of Somers for the town of Yorktown to prepare approximately 90 meals a day for the town of Somers at the cost of $4.50 per meal. The period of this agreement is January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolved that the town board authorizes the town supervisor to sign an agreement with the Westchester County Department of Senior Programs and Services for a Title 3C1 in the amount of $31,266 with an estimate of an additional $7,489 nutrition services incentive program, and a Title 3C2 in the amount of $50,457 with an estimate of an additional $20,212 nutrition services incentive program. This is for the period of January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? From the assessor's office, resolved that the tax certiorari proceedings affecting tax parcel 26.17 block 1 lot 1 account number 0727600 owned by State Land Corp for assessment roll years 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 are settled as set forth in the proposed stipulation as follows. For the public, there will be no reduction in 2014, no reduction in 2015, a $22,100 reduction for 2016, a $29,600 reduction for 2017, as well as in 2018 and 2019. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, from the town clerk, be it resolved, the town of Yorktown location code 30031 hereby establishes the following as standard work days for elected and appointed officials and report the following days worked to the New York State and local retirement system based on records of activities maintained and submitted by these officials to the clerk of this body. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? From the comptroller, be it resolved, the town board authorizes the budget transfers listed below to fund workers' compensation from January 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Passes. Councilman Diane, I understand that you have a resolution as well.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor. It is resolved, the supervisor is authorized to execute an agreement with Divinity Medical Services, PLLC, for the provisions of coronavirus COVID-19 antibody testing for town employees, an amount not to exceed $10,000, which in plain language is that we're going to offer up any town employee the ability to be tested at the town of Yorktown.
Motion.
Second.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. I will be abstaining from this vote. Full disclosure, my wife is an employee. This is of this company, and so I will not be taking a vote. I'll be abstaining from this action by the town board.
Okay.
That being said, that concludes all new business and all business before the board. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So let me just say one more. Strong health and recovery and sustainable recovery go together. That's my quote.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilman Patel.
Thank you, Vishnu.
Be smart, stay focused. Good night, Yorktown.
Good night, Yorktown.
Good night.
Good night.